Okay. All right. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the podcast. We are going to talk about teaming today. I have a lot of experience with teaming. Larry really loves running team. He'll tell you all about that.
Yeah, you know that.
It's something that I've done. I talked about it on the podcast before when I had Zeke on the truck with me. But we have a driver that's interested in teaming, and the subject was brought up. And so we're going to bring on a Landstar BCO that has been running team and has been listening to the podcast, and we're going to bring her on so that we can talk about that experience of running team at Landstar, which I think you'll find is a whole lot different than the conventional idea that you probably have running team if you've done it as a company driver. So, Larry, why don't you go ahead and introduce Judy and bring her onto the program?
Well, I met Judy online because she runs a very helpful Facebook page for not new, but people at BCOs at Landstar who want to seek help and seek mentoring. And she's got a very, very nice Facebook page called BCO Mentoring. And she does a really good job of monitoring it and keeping the trolls and the haters out and making it a nurturing place for people who really want to get information and not want to be made fun of. So that's where I first came across her. And then our paths have crossed with mutual friends that we have. And so I knew that she and her husband were very successful running a team operation at Landstar. And we've had a couple of people who have emailed in asking about team. And so I thought, well, I'll just ask Judy if she would mind coming on and just talking about team. So without further ado, Judy, I'd like for you to tell us a little bit about you and your operation and how you got started at Landstar and kind of what the opportunities are at Landstar for teams, and just take the floor, and we'll probably interrupt you a couple of times with some questions. But everybody, this is Judy Byerly.
Thank you, Larry. Thank you, Chris. When you initially contacted me, of course, I was like, no, I'm not one to speak publicly. A brief note, the BCO mentoring page, which is really where we got our start here. I'm simply a moderator there. People see my presence there more, but it actually was started by a great group of BCOs, and I'm just a helper on the page.
Oh, okay.
So,
I'll stand corrected.
But, I am around there quite a bit. My husband and I had been company team drivers for 13 years. And we had driven a variety of things. We had done chemical tankers out of the ports of Houston. We had done parts deliveries with Liftgate. We had driven line haul with doubles for 4 years. And as we were getting older, and we are an older team, I always tell people 2 geezers in the truck here to serve you. And but I think the most amazing thing about that is it really doesn't matter age or anything else here. The opportunity is available for everyone. If you walk in the door with a work ethic and an attitude of service, it is amazing. And I get terribly excited and ahead of myself when I speak about Landstar because of the opportunities that we have had here. So we were driving company team. We went through a family situation. We lost 3 family members. We sold our home. We gave up our jobs. We cashed out our 401ks. And by the time we got to that point, this beautiful retirement we thought we had ahead of us, it was pretty much toast. And we were at a point in our life where we didn't think that we could recover from that. Landstar has changed all of that for us. They didn't do the work for us, but they provided the opportunity for us. Right. And we took what little bit of cash we had. We went out. First-time truck buyers, often it's a difficult experience. Yeah. A lot of people want to break into it, and it doesn't matter if you have good credit or a little bit of money. Sometimes it's hard to get into that first truck. And but we came here with no experience as owner-operators. Good, hard driving experience behind us, but didn't have a clue about how to run a trucking business. And The one thing that I will say that we did have for us was we seriously, and you and Chris have spoke about this at times, the attitude of service. One of the things that I cross paths with frequently in helping on the mentoring page, or as people are referred to me, is, and forgive me because this is my point of view. Everyone has a point of view. What I seem to see happen frequently is people say, I have a truck and I have a CDL, therefore I'm special. Now that I own my own truck, I'm special. So when I come in the door, I expect to be treated special. And the reality is there are 10,000 BCOs here and they all have a CDL and they all have a truck. Now, what are you going to do to make yourself special? And we came in the door, we were willing to do anything. We put chains on the truck in the northern routes that no one wanted to run in the winter. That's where we went to make our money. We made wonderful contacts. Social media is kind of a love-hate relationship thing for me. But I have to give it credit that that is where I've met this wonderful group of BCOs who have mentored us, helped us, made us laugh, pass the days and things for us to begin to get to know people and learn the business. So that's how we wound up here, broke, getting older, and going, well, we don't have anything to lose. We might as well try this.
So how did y'all end up as truck drivers? How did that come about?
Well, my husband had dabbled in trucking back in the early 90s when we were still raising children. And he and I both were military veterans, not retired, but several years each. And that did not go very well. I basically told him at that point in time that if I wanted to live alone and raise children alone, that I wouldn't have gotten married. And so, but it was the typical over-the-road trucking job. I went on to nursing school. I was working, the kids grew up, they got married, he went back into trucking, and I was home alone, and he said, hey, there's this team thing going on out here, do you maybe want to try this a couple of years to get the kids through school, get a home paid for, and so on and so forth. And so I left what I thought was temporary and fully intended to go back into nursing as soon as we got those goals accomplished. And that was 16 years ago. I don't think I'm going to make it back to nursing at this point.
So that was about 2004?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
So had he been with a company for a while and you started teaming at that company, or did y'all get together? And then how did because a lot of people talk about like the empty nest program at Landstar where a
Correct.
BCO will bring their spouse on. So I'm assuming you had to go through a school and all that kind of stuff.
Yes, I did. Because he had been out of trucking a number of years, it was difficult for him to come back in. And so he found a company that was, shall we say, not top tier, but they were willing to take him because he did have a good safety record. And they took him and he ran for them, I'm going to say probably 8 months. And that's when he discussed with me the idea of my going to school. And so I went to a CDL school and finished that and got on the truck. He was my trainer at that company. And we worked there for a couple of months until we were able to move into a more reputable company. So we came in the traditional route. I went out there, did the thing by myself, and then joined him on the truck. And that's how most couples get started.
So you guys have been trucking together, did you say 13 years, what you said? 16?
16 now.
16 years, okay.
Yes, 13 years when we came to Landstar. Yes. I have a lot of regrets that we didn't come here sooner. For years, I had been nagging, wanting to buy a truck, even if I didn't know anything about it. He was like, hey, we have good jobs, and we had a busy life. And so it was not something he had as great an interest in. But I do wish we'd come here sooner. It's just that all that experience has made us who we are now, which is probably what makes us appreciate Landstar so much, is because we have seen a lot of trucking.
You said a couple of things that I want to just reiterate or stress again to our audience, because you made a point, and we talk about this all the time, not just at Landstar, but one of the things that we preach is that when you become an owner operator, you transition from your current identity of a typically an employee driver to now a business owner. And there is a skill set there that most people don't have or don't have developed at that point in time. And their ability to recognize that and address it and develop it quickly or develop it prior to making the move usually determines their success or failure. The thing you said that I want to restate is that in recent events, I think illustrate this. Just because you own a truck doesn't mean that you're entitled to a certain rate. Just because you own a truck doesn't mean that we have to give you business. You're just another face and another set of 18 wheels among about 3.5 million.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And what makes you survive or not is not because you have the truck and the CDL. And you said it so well, the attitude of service. I want to steal a line from a guy who I think a lot of you may know him. His name is Larry Wingett. He's a very sought after speaker and a motivational kind of guy, but he's not the kind of fluff guy that most people think of as motivational speakers. But he has a saying, it is discover your uniqueness and exploit it in the service of others. And at first glance, that word exploit, it typically has a negative connotation. But if you'll think about it hard, that's exactly what you're saying, is that you made yourself stand out from all the others because you found your uniqueness and let's leave the word exploit out. You used it in the course of building your business. And that's what made you successful and not one of the other faces in the crowd. Would that be a fair statement you would say then?
I think so. I was just discussing a quote by Zig Ziglar this week with someone. Initially, when I was younger, it didn't have the appeal for me. If you help enough other people get what they want in life, you too will get what you want in life. And I looked at that as, oh, you're using people, but that's not really the meaning of that quote.
No, no.
It's a natural occurrence. When we meet an agent, when we begin doing business with an agent, my goal is, and I tell them frequently, my goal is to be one of the best teams you've ever worked with. Tell me how we can best serve you, right? What works for you on this load? What can I do for you that will make this load easier for you, right?
Sure.
That's in my heart to do the best job we can. The result of that is they come back to us and ask us to do more business with them.
Of course.
So,
because the other people they work for are just the opposite. What are you going to do for me? This load is 10,000 pounds more than you said it was going to be. What are you going to pay me?
Right.
We got detained for 3 hours. What are you going to do about it?
Right.
So that's what they're used to working with. And then
Correct.
You come in and you go, what can I do for you?
Correct.
When I used to be in the sales business, my approach was just what you said. I need to get in the door. Give me your worst account. Give me your biggest problem. What's the thing that keeps you up at night? Let me have that. And then if I can do that, then I can earn everything else.
Correct.
Now, I understand exactly what you're saying. It's all about attitude.
It is.
There's a lot of things in the world you can't control. Attitude's not one of them. Every morning you set the tone, So interesting. Well, tell us a little bit about teaming at Landstar in terms of how do you find loads? How did you get started?
Hang on a second. I want to go a little bit more literal in the story here. I want to pause. So, because there's a lot of company drivers that are going to hear this. And I want to make sure we don't fast forward too much. So you guys are teaming for 13 years, tankers, doubles, line haul driving, right? So I'm assuming that you're probably making a pretty good living. I don't know, maybe 120,000, something like that as an income.
Yes.
So throughout that 13 years, does the owner operator possibility start to show up as you're going along as something that's off in the distance that I might consider that, I might look at that, or did you ignore it for a while? How did you first become, as a team, interested in business ownership?
I think probably, speaking personally for myself, business always fascinated me. I didn't feel that I had any knowledge or experience in it, but it was something that intrigued me. We would look at it from time to time. Frequently, when we would be at a company working, they would say, hey, we have an owner-operator program. And we would look at that and see what they charge for their trucks or see what they paid and go, gosh, it doesn't seem like that much of an advantage to us. But I wanted it, but we didn't actually strive for that. Our last company job, in all honesty, was a very good company job. We were home every week. We had outstanding benefits. But when we moved to a rural area, all of that was gone. They did not exist where we lived at that time to serve our family. And so that was gone. And that's when we really began to look at it. That and just the blind belief that maybe our work ethic that had made others so much money, that maybe if somehow we could harness that for our own benefit, that, so no, we didn't have a plan over the years. I kept trying to get out of trucking, to be honest with you. I was constantly enrolling in nursing school and then realizing there was another crisis and I better stay where I was, where the money was. So
as you come to, because it sounded like there was other events that led up to buying the truck, but you buy the truck. So from that point, are you already, is like Landstar the only destination to take
yes,
that truck? Okay.
That was our plan. Yes. When I decided to buy a truck, Landstar was the choice.
And so at that point, I'm curious to know, because a lot of people come into Landstar completely blind. They have an idea of what they think it's going to be like and then find out that it's completely different. So you're preparing to buy the truck. You've bought the truck. You've gone through the process to lease it on, which I guess is 3 years ago? Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
We just got our email to renew our contracts.
Okay.
Yes.
So about 2017, market's decent, So what was that first, say from, tell me a little bit about the truck itself. What kind of truck did you get? Where did you get it from? And then go through the process. And what's that first 90 days like?
A blur. It's a blur. I spoke with Landstar to see what their requirements were. I had just a little bit of cash left from the crisis that we had been through with family. And we had good credit. So I went to a Freightliner dealer and I said, hey, I've got X amount of dollars. How about selling me a truck? They were not impressed. They offered me a deal that I don't believe anybody should have taken, even though it was on a new truck, and they would finance me. They would give me a new truck, right? And I looked around and I said, okay, maybe we need to reserve part of this cash. Maybe I need to find a cheaper deal to go into. But I knew from our experience as teaming, okay, all drivers need to be reliable about that. Solos are just as responsible for getting their loads in on time as teams are. However, when you run expedited freight and you've got 41 hours to get from Charleston to the border in California, you do not have time to stop for service. You do not have time to blow a tire. You do not have time to do these things. And so the equipment that typically teams look for is something that is maybe newer, will take the miles, maybe still under warranty and things. But I put out a search to buy a newer used truck. And of all the financing deals I was offered out there, actually Lone Mountain offered me the best deal. And it is a lease purchase agreement. There are many people that don't understand it. If you have lots of cash and you've bought many trucks, you can go any place to get financing. First-time truck buyers, you don't have all those options. And I spoke with them at length. I said, I want a truck no more than 150,000 miles. They laughed and said, we'll call you in a year if one comes through the gate. But in reality, in 2 weeks, they called me. And there had been a small fleet owner that had lost 3 trucks. He had been forced to close his business. They repossessed 3 trucks. It had 154,000 miles on it. It looked brand new. They offered me what I determined to be a good deal to get in the door with, to get the business started. You know, a lot of times you're just desperate to get the business started. You don't have the best choices. You don't have the perfect financing and things available to you. And so we came in through Lone Mountain, and I cleared and made sure everything was good with Landstar, and we went and picked up the truck. And that's how we began.
Yeah, that's where I bought my truck, from Lone Mountain, so I'm familiar with the experience. And a lot of people that, you know, I cannot say a bad word about them.
I can't either.
You know, I have seen the comments on social media, which, you know, you mentioned social media. That's the CB radio of 2020.
Yes, it is. Yes.
But everything happened exactly as they described it. You know,
Yes.
I paid the down payment. I got the truck. I paid the payments.
Yes.
You know, at the very end, or not at the very end, when my engine broke, they gave me 1 month deferment on a payment, you know, put it at the end. And
Right.
okay. So you found a truck, you got a truck, which is what, like a 16 model, 15,
It's
16?
a 17. It's
Okay,
a
17 model
Yes.
Freightliner. I'm assuming Cascadia.
Volvo. We got the Volvo
Okay.
780 VNL.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay. So now you're at Landstar. You've gone through the gauntlet, as Larry and I refer to it, the qualification process.
Survived the first hurdle.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hell on earth, level 7.
Yes. Yes.
And you got a trailer. Now,
Which was your second hurdle, by the way.
Yeah. So you've got a
Very
truck,
true.
you've gotten qualified, you've gotten a trailer. Now, I'm assuming you have 0 relationships with agents, right? You got nothing at that point?
Correct. We did not know anyone. I meet a lot of people that they've got a friend here or they know someone here or something. We had no one. We knew no one that was at the company, leased to the company, worked for the company. We walked in as complete strangers. So.
I remember having this experience about 10 days in. And creepy is always the word that I use to describe it, because I'm thinking, there's no dispatcher. There's nobody to tell me to go.
Yes.
There's nobody to tell me to stop. I'm
Yes.
just going from agent to agent.
Yes.
And I was going back through my settlements yesterday or the day before with Zeke, where my best friend Zeke is looking at buying a truck. And I went back and looked at my first 6 or 8 settlements, and they're incredible. The revenue, we would be jealous of the revenue numbers right now that I did by myself. So, and all I did was I went from load to load to load.
Yes.
So as best as you can describe that first couple weeks, couple months, because team freight, as we'll get to here in a minute, as we start talking about agents and networking, team freight can be a little scarce around Landstar. So what was that like, that first entrance to the working the board?
Well, we were at the orientation center. Again, no contacts, no knowledge. And we were waiting on a company trailer to be assigned. We were in Fort Worth. And every day I would call into trailer utilization and say, hey, guys, we need to get working. You know, this has been a process. We've been out of work for a few weeks now getting through the process. And they would say, you're on the list. And about the 4th day that we were sitting in the orientation center, and now I'm starting to get nervous, like, oh gosh, this can't be happening. Another BCO wandered by and he said, have you checked the SOS board? SOS board? I don't know what the SOS board is, but sometimes, you know, a driver breaks down or something happens and the load has to be recovered. It has to be saved and taken on to the destination. And so he showed me how to do that. And that was the first of many, many, many times that BCOs have stepped in to help us. That I just will talk about that. what it means to have relationships here and have contacts here and build your network here and what it does for your business. And he showed me, well, there was a team load they'd been trying to recover for 3 days. It needed to be in LA. How fast could you get there, right? We bobtailed up there. I called the agent. I said, can we keep the trailer if we run it? He said, absolutely. We grabbed our stuff and off we went, and we grabbed it and headed for LA. And so that's how we got our first trailer. That's a good tip for anyone coming in. When you're waiting on that trailer, you watch that SOS board and always ask, can I keep the trailer after I deliver? Can I use this for my trailer then? And that is how we got started. A few things happened. I'm kind of OCD about things like the load board. The load board was fascinating to me. I saw all these opportunities of, but I didn't know anything. I didn't know the questions you were supposed to ask. I didn't know about the things to be aware of, and your phone will ring. When you're new and when you've been here a while, your phone will ring. Some of those offers will be wonderful offers, and some of those offers will be 10 stops for $1 a mile that take 3 weeks. You need to have a plan. You need to have a list of questions to ask when someone calls and presents an offer. What's your priority? Is it the location you're trying to get to? Is it the money that you're after? What are you willing to do? So I began hitting the load board, and our phone was ringing with offers. A couple of them were takers. They were good. We still didn't have a frame of reference. What does it cost to be in business? How much can we run for? I didn't have a cost per mile. I didn't have all those things figured out. So we just began running. Whatever we could get our hands on, we just ran. They want you to go to Wyoming. Okay, we're in Wyoming. They want you to go here. They want you there yesterday. We would give it all we got. And so we began working the load board, and that's what we did.
And were you only taking team freight, or were you taking just long solo freight?
No, that's the interesting thing, and that's why teams really do have a wonderful advantage here. There is team freight. There's quite a bit of line haul team freight if you can get in that truck and you actually run team. I meet a lot of teams that run what we call super single. Super
solo.
They're super solo. They they don't really want to hurry, but they generate extra revenue by having that second driver. Again, the beauty of choice at Landstar, there's a plan for everyone here, however you want to run. And but there is team freight, but sometimes we would see a load taking us to an area or had a good rate on it. And I would call them and say, we're a team. How would you feel if we gave you team service for a solo rate? May I deliver that a day early for you? And you would be surprised how often that they're willing to accommodate that. Well, sure, we can do that for you if you want to bring it in a day early. Thereby, I'm creating my own team freight and still moving toward the goal. So you can run team freight, you can run solo freight. There's freight to be had.
So how long would you say before you look up and the smoke is cleared and you think, okay, now I get it. Now I understand. Is it 90 days? Is it 6 months? Is it a year?
I'm going to say for me personally, 6 months. I did a search for Landstar Forums, and this is where the love-hate relationship comes in with social media. If you are not into networking, if that's not been part of your company driver, if you're not used to connecting with other drivers, if you're not used to being on Facebook, I cannot encourage you strongly enough to get with the program. As you said, it is the CB. We all started out with CBs, and I miss that. I still monitor mine, but there's rarely anyone on there like there used to be. But I joined a Facebook group. I actually joined a BCO mentoring page. And it was embarrassing, the questions I would ask. I mean, I honest to goodness didn't know anything. And I would get on there and I would say, okay, our first settlement just hit. And I set up direct deposit at orientation, but I can't find my money. My money's not in the bank. A BCO came in there and said, well, you have to do another
You got to
step.
do
This
that,
is,
yeah.
this is how you get your money. I chased
Option
my money
3.
for 3 or 4. Yeah, I chased my money for 3 or 4 days, and it became a joke. I was on that page so often asking questions, the most basic questions. That I had a BCO team, very experienced, very successful, commented, sent me a private message and said, hey, look, we check in every day just to see what you're going to ask, because you're just a hoot.
You're asking all the questions nobody else had the balls to ask.
Yeah. They were like, you're hysterical. And I said, hey, it's all about the money. I got to find the money.
I want to make a point here, and I'm not being negative, but I just want to make a point at how overwhelming this can be. Now,
Yes.
You spent at least 2 days at orientation learning how to do all this, okay?
Correct.
But yet the first paycheck you got, you didn't get paid because you didn't catch that part, or they didn't cover it, or whatever.
Correct.
And, that's kind of a two-edged comment that's made there. I mean, I have always advocated that our orientation is not near long enough nor thorough enough.
I agree.
And number 2, that's everybody that if you came here with your own authority, that's different. But people who come here that were company drivers, they have no concept of all the back end stuff that they have to now do that was done for them before.
Correct.
And this is the thing that if you're not prepared for that, if you're not able to develop that skill quickly, it's just bad news. It's bad news here, because now, thank God we've got groups like yours that can come in and help, but still there's only so much help that you can get. You can still have to ask the questions. If you don't know how to do the work, you still you can't get someone on Facebook to come do the work for you. So
that's correct. And people would say, did you not listen to orientation? And I would say I'm a note taker. I pay attention. Trust me, I was paying attention. But some things aren't covered. And one suggestion I would make for them is that the people teaching orientation, if they could find BCOs that actually had the experience to teach the class, and we have fine folks teaching it. It's not disrespectful of them. It's just when you've actually done the job, all those little things that driver is going to have their first few weeks on the road.
So Judy, I used to go, and still for the most part, I go to most orientations with every driver that I hire. Okay. Because number 1, I want to sit there and fill in those gaps that I see in here. Yes. And the other thing is, sometimes there's things, because they're working for me, that we do a little differently than if they were doing it on their own. And I need to head that off early on. Okay. So I have sat through probably 25 or 30 orientations. Okay.
Oh, wow.
God help you.
At least. Okay. So, and I can, and again, the fellow that we always go to, he's a good guy. I like him, but he's from the HR world. He's not even in the trucking business. Okay.
Yes.
And there's just things that are in this slideshow that there's depth that needs to be gone into. Correct. But it's just a slide. Next slide.
Right.
It's a whole lot more CYA than CPA.
Yes. Good point. Yeah. But anyway, and so what we have done, Judy, now is that we send all of our people to Landstar Forums because they're not going to be BCOs. They don't have to go to day 2, because nothing in day 2 are they going to do. Now, when they get ready to leave us and become BCOs, then they go back to orientation. And they get that if they even need it by then. But so we spend 1 day with them in orientation. And then we spend at least 2 days, if not 3, doing our own orientation, to basically make you functional on day 1. I mean, that's the supplement that we have to do to get people to be able to function, after that. So we just could see this huge gap in what they learned or what they knew coming in and what they were going to have to know day one when they started driving. And
Right.
we had to wait for a trailer anyway. So,
Right,
you know,
right.
it
And
wasn't like
that's
it was
another
downhill.
reason I have so much respect for what you and Chris are doing. You really are preparing the drivers, and we all know preparation is half the battle of being able to get out there and be a success. You know,
Yeah.
you've got to be thinking about all these things, and y'all do a wonderful job of that.
Well, thank you. Thank you for
So I'm guessing that your 6 month kind of awakening lands right in the middle of the biggest trucking market in the history of the trucking world, right? 2018.
Yes.
So I
Yes.
came in as a solo at that time in March, and he handed me the keys.
I'm the
Huh? Yeah. He. Yeah.
Not Lone Star, right?
Right. So Larry gives me the keys to the truck and log into the board, and I take off. And the amount of money that I generated in that first 6 or 7 months was obscene. You know,
Yes.
I was probably making more money then as a solo driver than a lot of teams do now. It was crazy. So
let me tell you a story. I had this FedEx dedicated route lined up for him whenever I was going to hire him. Okay. And
the Lord was looking out for me.
It just so happened that one of the legs fell off, you know, and so Chris said, "Why don't you let me run my own thing for a while and until you get this straightened out, you know?" And so I agreed to do it, but I would never have been able to generate for him the income in that, and even in that FedEx dedicated route that he did on the load board. So. But it was
that was a wild year. Of course, as company drivers, we'd never been privileged to what rates were, you know. Right. And but that was our first full year. We actually came in like October the year before, made our way through the winter with help from great people. And but that year, at the end of the year, I had this pile of money in the bank. And I told my husband, I said, I don't know what to do with all this money. I don't want to pay off the truck, you know. And we went and paid cash for a rental unit off of our first year. I mean, we just looked at each other and said, did this just really happen? Mm-hmm. Now, of course, I'm going to say we didn't back up from work. You know, it wasn't like Chris. We ran. I mean, we ran. And but that was a record breaker year. That was a great year.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that you got this 6 months now, you've got some experience, you've got some understanding. So at this point, have you started to lock in those relationships with agents and be able to build on that? Because I don't know the end of your story as to like what you're doing now. So the contrast between the beginning and now. So how does that progress, say, from 6 to 12 months as you get locked into doing those things? Like, for example, we know that there's stuff that never hits the board, you know, especially in oversized, really, really specialized stuff and the big money that the keyboard warriors think they deserve, but they'll never see it and they don't deserve it. So why don't you talk about, you know, let's just go from that a point of awakening kind of to now as you've began to build your own brand inside the system. And build those relationships.
Yes. And I always said that first 6 months, if I heard the word relationship one more time, I thought I was just going to scream. It just absolutely put me over the top. And yet now when I speak with new people, that's the first word out of my mouth. When we say relationships, we're not talking about just agents. We're talking about everyone. We're talking about other BCOs. We're talking about people on the corporate side, our support system, our business partners there. We're talking about customers, making a good impression, and you actually build relationships with customers, you know, that look forward to your truck coming. They like to see you because you provide great service for them. So we had a lot of line haul experience, and like many teams do, we gravitated toward that drop and hook freight. We do quite a bit of work. I don't know, without listing accounts and things and getting into privileged information, but there's a lot of FedEx. There's some other line haul business and things here. There's some large agencies that handle large accounts. And we found ourselves, because we had a lot of experience in that, gravitating to that kind of work. And a couple of BCOs that I had met through the mentoring page, we became friends. And after, what you will find is BCOs can help you a tremendous amount. They can. Be selective about who you allow in your circle. I chose people that were positive, that were professional, that were accomplishing the things that we wanted to accomplish. We stayed away from the whiners and the complainers and the people that never had anything good to say about the agents or Landstar or anything else. We completely stepped away from anything that was negative. And we were fortunate. A couple of those BCOs called into agents and said, hey, we've met this team. We've been watching them for a couple of months and we think they're good people. If you've got anything you can throw that way. What an amazing gift is that, So there was a particular agency we were working with. They didn't have a loop. They didn't have dedicated. They didn't, but they had a lot of freight on the board. And the rates were good. And we began running quite a bit for them and building that relationship. And so pretty soon it went from just having to work the board. I began to work my way in and say, hey, if you have anything that would connect with this, would you give me a call? We wanted, there's so many facets to this. This particular agency we love to do business with. They were very above board. They were, their integrity was impeccable. Their rates were good. And I found 2 of their runs that I could do that would take me back and forth and make good money. But I had to deadhead 750 miles to get from one leg of it to the other.
Interesting.
And I asked them, if I'm willing to do this, would you commit to me? Can I have those 2 runs every week? And half of the camp was, you're crazy to deadhead. The other half of the camp that had made their money and was used to team freight and everything said, I'd probably do that to get in the door too, And so we did. We ran like that for 2 or 3 months. They lost one of the lanes, and so that came to an end. And that's something to not get discouraged about. When you're here and you finally lock into something you really, really want to do, don't be discouraged if 6 months down the road, 2 years down the road, whatever, that opportunity ends, because there will be 5 more right behind it.
So let's talk about that, what you just said, because, you hear the don't haul cheap freight. 750 miles of deadhead would qualify as cheap freight. So you sat there and you made the decision. You looked at the numbers, you looked at the revenue for the 2 loads you were doing, you factored in what the cost of that deadhead was going to be, and it was still a good business decision for you to do that. Forget the building the relationship part, just the monetary part of that decision had to be there. Now, had you listened to the naysayers, because there's a lot of people that would have said, do not do that. Don't move that truck unless you're making fill in the blank, right?
Correct.
Isn't it funny how making a decision based on numbers and business is different than making a decision based on what the committee of they said?
Right. Correct. Again, I always stress what worked for us may not work for anyone else. We have some non-traditional, unorthodox methods that we go through. But I'm going to tell you, we have made very good money here and we have great relationships. And in my mind, it has paid off.
You're in an unorthodox world right here, okay?
Absolutely.
We've been called lunatics, okay? So you're in good company right here. Well, you talked about this building relationship thing, and we hear that word. Well, actually, that's there's some words that you never hear by themselves, okay? You never hear I want to I suggest we paint this wall. It's always, let's put a fresh coat of paint on this wall. Okay. You never hear the word relationship. It's build relationship. It's coupled with another word. Okay.
Right.
And people go, well, how do you do that? What does that mean? I mean, build relationship. What do I do? What do I get up tomorrow and do? And so, I kind of have an idea here, and I want you to, and it's very simple, and it's not, has nothing to do with trucking. Okay. You probably already know this, but I come from a business background, not trucking background. Okay.
Right.
And when I teach people business and what I've done business, your competitive edge is very simply this: do what you say you would do it when you said you would do it exactly like you said you would do it, and do it for the price you said you would do it. Now,
Absolutely.
if you do those 4 things, okay, with no exceptions and no excuses, the relationship is built. The competition is gone. It's just that simple. It's just that simple. Okay.
There is no way to explain the success we have had. We are not one of the top earning teams. I know there's people so far above us that would make my head spin, but it is beyond anything we initially thought was possible when we came in the door. And I credit it with the relationships and keeping our word. I really do. So,
we talk a lot about the numbers here. We've been open about how we build our model and the kind of money that we need to make in order for our drivers to make a living, in order for us to maintain the trucks and earn a profit. But I would, I'm not trying to get in your business, but I would like people to hear some sort of, we run for a minimum of $12.50 a day. If it can't pay $12.50, we're not going to do it. I would love to know, because Zeke and I tried to run team in 16, and we just were clueless as to how to make it work. So to give people an idea of the expectations, if you do the hard work, if you build the relationships, like what can you expect, or what should you expect to be able to do as a Landstar team that has put in the work?
I guess that's kind of a hard question to answer, Chris. I did not have a set minimum or anything. When I say that we're not there completely knowledge-wise and everything perfectly pegged at this point in time, I was always shooting for 6,000 net. Okay. That was what I was always shooting for. If we were on the road working, I was looking for 6,000 net after Landstar's cut and after our fuel cost. Okay. Obviously, not before, our payroll and the truck payment and all of those things, but I was looking for 6,000. And many, many times the dedicated that we ran last year, problematic as it was considerably higher than that. So if you're working, if you're out there working, gosh, I just hate to qualify anything like that. If you're a team that's working, there's no reason you shouldn't be dumping $5,000 a week in your bank account, unless you are the team that says, I'm not doing this, and I'm not going there, and I will sit here and wait 4 days for the perfect load. I will spend $300 in fuel, and I will deadhead wherever I have to get to, and I will burn a day of driving because I'm going to pick up a $10,000 load. Mm-hmm. Okay. So, but again, that is our method. That is not for everyone, but yeah, minimum of $5,000 minimum.
I could squeeze by on that,
Yeah.
Well, and that makes sense, because I've always maintained it as a solo at Landstar that's not messing around. Bring down 3,000, 3,500.
Right.
Right. Like you say, after fuel and before your other expenses, but net revenue to the truck.
Right.
So as a team where you're actually running, now correct me if I'm wrong here. When I talk to people about teams, my expectation that I tell them is that you'll do 1.5 of a good running solo. You're not going to do double, but you'll run at least at Landstar. But just because of the fact that we don't have a lot of that team freight, you're running a lot of times as a super solo. So at 5, that's right in with what I would tell people to expect. So that's.
I think we took on a problematic dedicated last year, and that's why I always just have to sit and smile when I listen to so many of you that I consider to have so much more knowledge than I do about things. It was a problematic run. Lots and lots of delays at the shipper. I mean, it just really was a problem. But this was a multi-million-dollar account for this agent and for Landstar, and the pay was good. And I think that was one leg of our trip, East Coast to West. I want to say probably by the time we put everything together for that, our net was somewhere. I contributed to an escrow account, still do, was right about $7,500 a week to the truck, so, there's money to be made out there, and there were teams that were making more money than that, so, but there's money to be made if you're willing to work.
Okay. Larry?
Well, just to get, let's talk a little bit more. Now, if someone were coming on as a team and they don't have the relationships yet and all that sort of thing,
Right.
and the load board is the tool that they're going to have to use,
Correct.
at first, So how would you use the load board? I mean, you kind of tell us how did you set up your, what were the parameters that you used, and give us a little bit of insight on how you used that big tool that we call the load board.
Certainly. Disclaimer again, my methods. I began stacking freight. What I realized was that, a load post and you either grab it or it's gone. And so I would go out into the distance. I would book, I would start with my first load and say, okay, I'm going to go from A to B. Now I need something within range of that to carry me on. And I began booking out, and I would book 2 weeks of freight at a time, 3 weeks of freight at a time, because those loads, those good paying loads, do not last. Right. And something else that you find out is the agents with the regular lanes and things like that. Let's say California to Florida run. Well, you realize that every few months they get the rest of those loads booked. And if you call them and say, if you have the relationship and they know they can trust you, right, they will let you have those loads. Say, I'll take one of those every week for the next 4 weeks.
Well,
But to back up to what you were saying, I stacked loads. And if a load fell out in between, we kept going. We deadheaded to that next load. We did not ever call that agent and say, I'm so sorry, our connecting load fell through and we can't, we're leaving you with no notice, but we're not going to be there.
You own the load. You took it.
That's right. That's right.
Well, the haters would say, well, what if a load's going to cancel, or, what if you get held up? That's what, I agree with you. I mean, that's exactly how we do it. I find that if I'm looking for a load today for tomorrow, I'm going to have to make 100 phone calls to get that. Okay. If I'm looking for a load for next week or 10 days from now, I have to make 2 phone calls to find a load.
Yes, I agree.
And because the majority of people who run at Landstar run one load at a time, they don't look for a load till they're backed into the dock and delivering the load they got. So everybody, there's 9,000 drivers now, they're looking for a load for tomorrow,
Right.
It's just a race to the bottom,
Right.
And so I find it very frustrating to try and do that. I agree with you. We teach to stack. We stack at least probably 10 days out,
Right.
And when you're dispatching multiple trucks, can you imagine if I had to book a load for every truck every day, what my life would be like,
Right.
So, so part of it is selfish, but at the same time, it's still the right strategy, in my opinion, the other thing about the stacking thing is that, I just lost my train of thought, Chris. Help me out.
That train left a long time ago.
Well, well, I started to say, to add that in there, when you begin learning to do that, be very cautious about that. Do not overcommit to where you cannot follow through and service that customer.
Right.
We all know weather is going to happen. Traffic is going to happen. That receiver is not going to unload you as quickly as what they said they were. Build yourself a little time in between there, unless it's accounts that you are personally familiar with and you know that it usually goes off without a hitch.
Yeah.
You know, the last thing you want to do is you've got 10 loads stacked and all of a sudden one load causes a 10-hour delay and now you're behind for the next 10 days.
Well, and that was,
so be careful about that.
I remember my point now. Yes. So we go through 2 or 3 weeks and have no problems. And then we'll have a couple. But the problems that we have are not often enough or drastic enough or severe enough to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Absolutely.
Just because it happens one time doesn't mean that we change our strategy and don't do this anymore. That was the point I was going to make.
Well, I can provide a real world example. It's taken 7 months, but Operation Enduring Cluster finally caught up with me. My customer, dedicated customer, never stopped shipping throughout the pandemic.
Wonderful.
And we got to about 3 weeks ago, and they're like, hey, we're not going to have your load ready till tomorrow. I'm like, okay, I got to hustle to get 15 stops off in 2 days, but I can do it. And then the next week, well, we're still behind today. And then last Monday, they called me, hey, your load's going to be 2 days late.
Right.
I'm like, that can't work, and I called the shipper directly and I'm like, hey buddy, these customers closed on Saturday. He's like, well, how are we going to get them delivered? I'm thinking with a helicopter, and so he's like, well, let's move them to Monday. I'm like, okay, we can do that, except I've got another customer that I always serve on Monday. So I had to call them and say, listen, my other customer can't get people to come to work because they make more money on unemployment. So they can't manufacture the products fast enough. There's a huge difference in calling somebody saying, I can't help you next week versus I can't help you tomorrow, and of course these long-standing relationships. And so now here I'm sitting going, like, I'm going to leave here in about 30 minutes to go deliver a load that should have been delivered last Wednesday, and then hope that maybe they're back, but a lot of people don't understand, and I had to understand it at first. Whatever's on that truck and that trailer, it owns you. That's your only priority on this planet right now.
It does.
And until it's unloaded,
right?
Everybody else can have a Coke and a smile because it just doesn't matter.
Right.
Don't you love the new BCOs that go, well, how come I can't just drop this at a terminal and somebody else deliver it for me and give me an empty trailer, let me go on?
Bless their hearts.
Welcome to the world of Landstar.
It is. We got caught with a load when we were brand new like that. A high-paying load. Oh my gosh, we had stars in our eyes, and it was a team load. They were in a hurry, and it was going to one of those infamous automotive plants.
Oh yeah.
And it was supposed to deliver on Friday morning. There was this obscure holiday that Friday that no one had given any consideration to because most of us have to work through that. And guess what? That plant was closed down.
It's a union plant. Let me guess.
Oh, yes. And naturally, they were not going to open up again until Sunday night.
Yeah.
And I look back at that and I laugh at a lot of it. And I'm thankful for the people that put up with me. I called the agent and I said, I've got loads booked. I've got to be there. And there was no help to be had. We sat there for 3 days waiting to unload that, And then, of course, being new, I was like, this is my truck. We're owner operators. I want $2,500 a day to sit there. And of course that brought a lot of laughter about that. And, we never did get any attention off of that. So there are lessons to be learned. You've got to have some nerves of steel at times and just understand that it's part of the process. So many loads will go perfect without a hitch, but there will be those, but they're just a bump in the road. It's not a permanent thing.
But the overall strategy is that, in my opinion, and I think yours too, that booking loads like that, stacking loads, to use that term, will pay off more often than it will not, because
Oh, we
those
just
things
stayed.
don't happen often enough for you not to use that strategy.
Absolutely.
And the
Absolutely.
other
And
thing is, don't ever sit. If you're,
right.
like you said,
Right.
if you have to deadhead 750 miles, eat it, because your fixed cost is there whether you're driving or not. So
Correct.
sitting is not free. You're
Correct.
still absorbing those fixed costs, and you can't ever go back and undo them.
Correct.
So every day you sit waiting for that load that eventually after 3 days you're going to take anyway, now you've just lost 3 days of fixed costs while you sit there not doing it. So
exactly.
And I'm just for the sake of the record, okay, the asterisk to that, there are people that are so incredibly specialized, right? That,
yes.
And trust me, if you're listening to this, you're not that person, okay? It's not you that I'm talking about, okay? But there are people that will sit a week, but y'all, they're getting $9 a mile because they're so incredibly specialized.
Yes.
And they're so valuable that they will set. And if I was that valuable too, I would set my country ass down and wait for a big one to come along too.
There you go.
But there's more people. There's more people who think that they fit that description that actually do, though. If you're pulling a van, okay, or even a flatbed, you're not that person, okay.
Correct.
So
correct.
Now if you've got one of those things with 18 axles and stuff, God bless you.
Right.
But I had a, we're all van here, okay, and that's all I know. And one time I had a new BCO convince me to dispatch him, and he was a flatbed, and I'm like, buddy, I'll do my best, but I know nothing about your business.
Right.
It was the hardest thing because I didn't know how long it took to tarp. There's so much deadhead and flatbed. I mean, after about 3 weeks, I said, look, I'm doing you a disservice. I'm not taking your money anymore. Find somebody who's a flatbedder to help you out, because it's just a different world, and that's what Chris is talking about. When we talk here, we're talking generality. We're talking to people who haul van freight, and just the regular people, not the specialized people, And so what we say isn't the asterisk that he refers to. Yes, there are going to be some people that this would not apply to, but it's very few and far between, and you're probably not listening to our podcast. So,
addressing the idea of specialized freight, Larry, that's something that we get a lot of questions about. There are different divisions within Landstar. There are amazing opportunities here. You can go into the government work. You can get clearances and do that. You can go into temperature control pharmaceuticals and things that I haven't even heard of yet.
Sure.
We've been here 3 years, and I can honestly say I'm more excited now than I have been at any point since we got here. It just keeps building. But although we happen to both be military backgrounds, we both were active duty. And so we were approached initially, would you be interested in this over here? My take on that was we needed to learn everything from the ground up. We needed to be able to do the most basic freight and really, truly be comfortable in the Landstar system before we started trying to be special. And we've just now ventured into some different freight and making some changes and things here. But I would encourage people when they come, give yourself some time. There's a lot of stars out there to grab for, but give yourself the time to build a good foundation. Get to know the agents. I would say that the majority of our agents are just absolutely some of the best of the best. But just like the BCOs, there are some that maybe integrity is not on their high, list priorities and things. Don't waste your time. If you have a bad experience, move on. Make a note that maybe it would not be in your best interest to deal with that agency again. But I can honestly say we have had so few problems of anything like that. But get in there and build a foundation. Look around at all the different opportunities there are and begin building a business plan to move into a different kind of freight.
So let me ask you this, Judy, because I get this question a lot, and I honestly don't know how to answer it. But after hearing you today, I think probably I would change my answer. But when I've had people who see me at a truck stop or whatever, and they're a team, and they go, is Landstar a good place for teams? I used to say, well, I honestly don't know the answer to that. I don't see a lot of team freight,
Right,
but I'm not
right,
looking for it, but I don't really
right,
know.
right.
Now, what would you say to that question? Is Landstar a good place to be a team, in your opinion? I think I know the
Uh,
answer, but I'm gonna let you say it.
in my opinion, it's amazing.
Good.
It's amazing. Looks are deceiving on that board. And the relationship thing again, where I used to have to make all the phone calls. I just got a message from an agent recently. I didn't even know of that agency. I had never heard of it.
Mhm.
And what the message was, this BCO, who we highly value, told me about you, and we'd like to do some business with you if you're in our area. How amazing is that,
There
that
you go.
someone would do that for you?
Sure,
But it was
sure,
based on reputation,
sure.
And so we now get some calls. I still work the board,
Mhm,
especially since we've moved in. We did purchase a refrigerated trailer this spring. We
mhm.
are doing temperature control freight as well as dry van now. And but my phone rings, but I still work the board. And it's all about being creative. It's about being willing to do what the next guy next to you is not. We just deadheaded 900 miles to help an agent.
Mhm.
uh, I had a BCO tell me I was crazy for that. They didn't know what that agent was paying. They
Sure.
didn't know that that agent calls us. And there are good team opportunities out there. Yes, absolutely.
We've got 10,000 drivers here typically, or BCOs, and we have about, I think the number was 14. I think it's more like 1,200 now agents. Okay,
Hmm.
agencies at Landstar.
Hmm.
And just like the BCOs are looking for the good agents, believe me, the good agents are looking for the good BCOs. It's a two-way street.
It
And if you
is.
get that reputation out there of being one of those good BCOs who did everything we talked about a while ago,
Right.
they're gonna look for you. They want to find you because it makes they spent all this time and effort to get this customer, and they turn it over to somebody that doesn't treat them very well, and it just is counter to everything they've had to do to gain this customer. They want somebody to
Absolutely.
go there that represents them just
Yes.
like they have represented themselves, to this customer. So it's I know it's probably a little bit a cliche, but I mean that's really what that's really what they want, is someone that will take care of their customer. We talk about this too here, is that a lot of BCOs don't understand who their customer is. They think
Right.
their customer is who they're shipping to, you know. And we point out to them all the time, no, your customer is the agent. That's who
Right.
your customer is.
Right. Right.
That's their customer. You need to take care of them, but taking care of that shipper or that you know and then treating the agent bad is not going to do anything good for you as far as helping you get more freight from that person.
Correct.
So,
Correct.
well, listen, we've
Uh,
gone on here longer than we probably thought. Judy, thank you for being here. If someone wanted to get a hold of you to talk to you, are you willing to do that, or would you rather them come through our email and us forward to you? What is your comfort level with questions or emails or whatnot?
I always tell everyone I really don't know very much at all, but I know a lot of people. But I know a lot of people that
But
do
do.
know a lot, and I make a lot of phone calls. It's been such a wonderful opportunity, and so many people have helped us that I'm always willing to help, and I don't mind to take phone calls and things. If it's beyond my knowledge level, which many things are, I just refer them on to someone that knows more than I do, and. Um, Coming here with the right attitude and things, it'll change your life in trucking. There's no doubt about that.
Well, if you're a BCO, you can find her at BCO Mentoring. It's called Landstar BCO Mentoring. Is that correct, on Facebook?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
If you'd like to, for us, our everybody knows our information, Larry or Chris at blueribbonlogistics.com. Send it to us. We'll forward it to Judy, and she can respond to you if she gets a chance. Judy, I want to thank you again for doing this. Chris, do you have anything before we wrap up here?
No, I think that's it. I really appreciate you being here. It's opened my eyes because if I kind of had it to do over again, because I enjoy teaming.
Right.
Y'all are nuts. Well, Judy's not. She's married.
Yeah.
But teaming with somebody you're not married to?
Well, I teamed with,
or in my case, teaming with my wife?
Yeah.
No.
Well, I teamed both
That's
of
a whole
my cousin.
other topic, Larry.
Yeah, that's what the deal. She's been on the truck with me a couple of times, and I just can't wait to get her back home. I can't have people in my space. I just, putting your book where it doesn't belong, putting your shoes where I can't do it. Sorry.
I've had 3 really good team drivers, and that makes a huge difference because I've had a few bad ones, and the bad ones are hell on earth. So yeah, if you guys have any questions with, if you're a team or you're curious about this, look up the Landstar BCO mentoring group, send us an email. We can get you in contact with Judy. And I believe, that's about it.
Let me say one more thing, a recruiting thing. We are talking to a couple of BCOs who are going to have trucks that we've got some trucks that aren't going to be ours that we're going to be managing and dispatching probably coming up in the fall. So, and then we're also looking at adding some more trucks. So again, we're looking for drivers. So if you're interested in being part of the Lunatics and taking advantage of this opportunity at Landstar, and we now would be open to a team now that we understand how this works. So get a hold of us, Larry at Landstar or at Blue Ribbon Logistics.com. Chris, do you have the phone number? Do you know the phone number? we have a phone number. We don't know what it is. Anyway, thanks, guys. Judy, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
We'll see everybody again soon. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, everybody. See you next time.
Thank you.